The Marrakesh Treaty. The Marrakesh Treaty was adopted on 28 June 2013. It is an international treaty adopted with the sole purpose of ending the book famine faced by people who are blind, visually impaired, or otherwise print disabled. It is estimated only between 1 and 7% of the world's books are ever transcribed or converted to a format that those who are visually impaired or print disabled are capable of reading. The treaty attempts to circumvent copyright issues in two manners. The first by requiring those who are signatories to the treaty to legislate an exception to copyright law for visually impaired and print disabled people. The object of this is to ensure that those who are visually impaired or print disabled may without permission convert the books to a format these people are capable of reading. This exception is required to be subjected to various stringent obligations to ensure the ongoing protection of the rights of the copyright holder, including restricting those who may produce, handle, import or export these documents. The second imposition from the treaty enforces a requirement to allow for the import and export of accessible versions of books and other copyrighted works, again without the copyright holder's permission. The purpose is to allow for the free transmission of accessible books from those who have more substantial production programs to countries where availability is less common. Fundamentally, the treaty intends to maximize access and minimize cost for the beneficiary person. Under Article 3 of the treaty, a broad definition of beneficiary is found. The definition extends beyond visually impaired people to any individual suffering a disability that interferes with their effective reading of printed material. The works subject to the treaty under Article 2A include literary and artistic works in the form of text notation and or related illustrations, whether published or otherwise made publicly available in the media. Notably, this treaty does not include works of film, nor does it permit the alteration of materials for any purpose. Ultimately, the definition extends to any literature that one might reasonably expect an individual to have available to them, whether for educational purposes or for leisurely pursuits. In addition, Article 2b governs the format which the converted works will take, allowing whichever format will provide access to the work as feasibly and comfortably as a person without visual impairment or other print disability. This is an integral element as it ensures that the method of reproduction is not restricted such that it excludes certain disabled people from utilising the materials. Finally, Article 2c provides who may undertake the process of converting the documents to a readable format for the beneficiary persons. Authorised entities are required to be government or non-profit organisations that make accessible copies of works and limit distribution of those copies to persons who have suffered a bona fide disability. There is no specific description of what constitutes an authorised entity, however, any satisfaction of Article 2c will be sufficient. Unfortunately, while 83 nations have assented to the treaty, only 13 have ratified it into law. The treaty requires 20 nations to ratify it in order for it to come into effect. There are an estimated 285 million people who are blind or visually impaired, with 90% of these living in low-income settings. Access to the written world is an imperative right of individual humans. For an individual who suffers a print disability or visual impairment, it is essential that literature remains available to them to ensure they are able to complete education programs, achieve success in the workplace, and not least to participate in the leisurely activity of reading. While various organisations are undertaking to digitise the subject material, there is still significantly more work to be done. As the cost is significant for this process, it is imperative that government agencies and charitable organisations endeavour to seek funding to end the purported bank famine. Digitisation of these materials through organisations such as Internet Archive will advance the process of providing these materials to those living in developing nations. To fail to provide such material would be paramount to ensuring that disabled persons are further marginalised.
Created using Powtoon.